There's a blessing that my team channeled years ago for me that they're prodding me to bring in. So I'll see if I can remember. I remember the one piece they're mentioning, but it's bless my mouth so that I may speak words of kindness to myself and others. Bless my eyes so that I may see the beauty in the world. Bless my ears so that I may hear and recognize the truth. Bless my hands so that I may feel generous to give and worthy to receive. And bless my feet so that they fall on the path of my highest and good, guided by my angels and ancestors.
Yeah, beautiful. Anything else that they want to tell us going forward in the 2025 year?
Be love, like be the existence of love, but then be, comma, love. So like, don't forget to just be.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Ask Julie Ryan Show. It's where we blend spirituality and practicality to help you live a life of purpose and joy. We have Heather Mays back on the show with us today. Heather's an intuitive artist, author, psychic medium, and channeler. Since she was last on the show, Heather, along with her guides, has done my energetic signature portrait. I plan to ask Heather to interpret the patterns and colors and how to best use the information they share. Please remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode with your family and friends. Now let's go talk with Heather. Heather, welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. I think that's a song.
Thank you. It is from Welcome Back,
I
Cotter.
know. I
Yeah,
know.
I remember
My
that
friend
show.
Alex Ferrari always says, returning champion. So I can say that
Yeah.
about you.
What?
We had you on a bit ago and it was so much fun and I got a Christmas present that you helped facilitate that I want to talk about in a couple of minutes. But first, you say love never dies. What do you mean by that?
I mean, love is the fabric of existence. It is the very nature of who we are, what we are, where we are, how we are. And even when our loved ones depart, as you know, they pack up that love and it's just, if not transmuted, it is amplified. And the way in which we connect to the love may change. We may have to learn a few new tricks of the trade to connect with spirit, but the love is always there. And I kind of see it as this beautiful current or wave. You know, when you are out on some hot pavement and someone throws some water down and you have that kind of ooey mist effect coming up. That's how I see love. It's just all around us like that. Um, and it never goes away. It just can't. The sheer nature of it, it does not die.
You have a team of multidimensional guides in the angelic realm, as well as the seventh and ninth dimensions. Please tell us how you met and now work with them, and what happened to the eighth dimension. Is there not an eighth dimension?
That's a fantastic question. So, how I met them, they all filtered in at different times throughout my life. The angelic realm was probably the easiest for me to connect to around. I mean, I've had guides my entire life. Whether or not they self-identified, kind of where they ranked or where they dialed in multidimensionally, that came later in life. So the angels came around pretty early in my 20s and made it very clear through some messages and the constant repetition of the number 9111, which matches Psalm 9111. I don't remember if we even talked about that story the
No.
last
What's
time I was
Psalm
on.
91:11?
He shall give his angels charge over thee to keep thee in all thy ways. So it's a fun story. What happened was I had just switched apartments because my apartment had been robbed and I lived at that time on the first floor and I wanted to go up because I thought, well, I'll at least give them a challenge if anybody wants to come back. They'll have to walk up some steps. So I was adjusting to this new place and still in that kind of fight or flight mode of being a victim of a crime, and came in from work one day and the back when we had answering machines, the light on the answering machine was blinking. Like I had a message, but the number of messages said 0. So it was a little strange. And at that time, you could also pick up the phone and you heard like multiple beeps if you had a voicemail. And I heard the beeps. So I called the voicemail and it was this extremely distraught, eerie, ghost-like male voice that was kind of whispery and said, "Help me," over and over. And it was very freaky. Now, I've seen, dead people, I talked to guides and all of that, but still, that was a bit much for me, still coming off of the robbery, and I'm like, "Okay, I'm not liking this life so much right now, it's a little scary." But after I settled my nerves for a minute, I thought, "I need to call the" I don't know why I thought this. "I need to call this person back, because if he was trying to reach a family member or somebody that he really did need help, I need to let him know he didn't get the right person." So, I dialed the number back, *69, like you could do back then, and the only thing I received was a different voice that just said, "He shall give his angels charge over thee to keep thee in all thy ways," Psalm 91:11. It wasn't, "Hey, it's Bob, leave me a message." It was just that. And I think at that point, I threw my phone across the room because that was just too many weird things at once. And then I tried to call back again. I thought, "Did I make that up?" Same message. Over the course of, like, the next week to 2 weeks, anytime I would call this number, I would get the message, and it never beeped like you could leave a voicemail. It was just the outgoing message. What's fun is I would ask my friends to call, "Hey, you try." They would call, and it would just ring. I would call, and I would get the
Wow.
message.
Wow.
So I thought, "Okay, something's going on." Angels, give his angels charge over thee, 9111. Then I started seeing the number 9111 everywhere. It would be on the receipt that I got at the store. It would be something, on a computer screen. There was a point in this kind of period of 2 to 3 months where I could go to a bookstore or a library, pick any book in any area, any genre, flip it open, and something on the page would have 9111. It would be like the table number from a chart, or it would be like it was everywhere. One day I was driving down the road and saw a book kind of overturned in the middle of the road, and I just felt the nudge. It's gonna be in that book. It's gonna be in that really random book on the side of the road, and stopped my car. There was no traffic. I wasn't quite that excited to find the synchronicities in the messages, but I got out, and sure
You weren't
enough,
really
that
you weren't willing to risk your life.
no,
Eh,
I had gotten so many, it's like, "I don't even need this validation, but I'll go." And, sure enough, it was in that book. So that was how I met the angelic realm, a little dramatically, but from that period of time, I understood the way in which they communicated, but also, like, the different bandwidth or the different frequency that they would come in that was different from the guides that I had known. I kinda call, like, my regular guides, you know how you have regular plates and silverware, and then you have, like, the fancy company. The angels are like the china, the expensive, um, silverware and plates and things, servings, and my regular guides just felt different. So, for a number of years, I worked with the angelic realm primarily, and then, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago or so now, the Galactic started to come in, and that was more of a physical experience because my frequency needed to raise higher than the angelic realm, and that doesn't mean better, it's just a different wavelength in order to connect in an extended period of time. So I went through a lot of physical experiences of being extremely exhausted and then wide awake for days, and that would kind of dip and come in and out of that, and had an experience of witnessing a craft, had some fun things in my driveway happen, um, with messages and orbs and things being arranged in a way to answer questions that I had. I don't know why my team has to be so dramatic all the time, but so that's how I met the Galactics, and that is where some of my art comes from now. So I think they were coming on board when it was time for me to kick that off. And as far as the 8th dimension, I really don't know. No one really talks about it, do they? I know the 4th is kind of the pass through, or as I understand it, and as it's been explained to me. The 4th is kind of the pass through from 3rd dimensional reality to 5th, where it's dreams, and it's almost like the island of lost toys of dimensions. It's all the weird stuff kinda lives in there, as we're passing through. So maybe the 8th is like that between the 7th and 9th floors of the hotel as I like to see them. But yeah, I don't know why there's
I I get on the
nobody there.
8th dimension, was going, "What's up with the 8th dimension? I heard top secret, inaccessible."
That's so funny you said that because the very second you asked, I saw, like, the no access kind of sign,
Yeah.
like, "You can't come in here."
Who gets
So
to
I don't know.
access it? I heard
I
God. Who
know.
else gets to access it?
We need the
The
credentials.
spirits and beyond. Ah! My son, when he was little, Jonathan, you see, "Mommy, ask the spirits and beyond." Like, when I first started studying this stuff, he was really little.
Yeah.
And he'd say, "Mommy, ask the spirits and beyond." Usually when it was something he wanted and I was saying no to it.
Oh,
He
that's
was hoping
clever.
they were gonna come in
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
join his side. Couple of
They will override your
Yeah,
answer.
exactly.
Mhm.
I'm thinking, "Where do you think I'm getting this guidance from?" From the spirits and beyond. But the like he was ever denied anything. I mean, please. He's an only child, center of the universe, right? We refer to him
Oh,
as
yes.
His Majesty even now. Couple of points, and then I wanna get into the galactic thing. When you first started talking about connecting with your angels, my clock said 333, which is an angel number for the timer. And when you talked about 9111,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
9 plus 1 equals 12. 1 plus 2 equals 3. 3 in the Bible is the number for divine perfection.
Mhm.
That struck me too. So,
Beautiful.
you can't
Yeah.
throw out a tease like, "All this stuff happened in my driveway and I saw a ship,"
Well, I didn't remember if we talked about it,
and
but
then
I guess
then
we didn't.
and then just go on like you didn't drop that little, tease, that big tease there. So,
Okay.
what happened? What kinda crap
Mhm.
did you see? What's that all about?
So, I was outside with my dogs one morning, early before the sun had even come up, and out in the distance, I saw hovering kind of on the horizon this blue orb that kinda dipped in and out and did weird things, and it wasn't a street light, and it wasn't a headlight, it was just and it didn't come on and off, it kind of came into existence, out of existence, into existence, out of existence, and I thought, "Okay, alright, we're doing this now. Cool." Because I've learned to roll with it now since the 9111. And that same day, there was this immense, short-lived snowstorm only in my yard. The neighbors didn't get any snow. Across the street, they didn't get any snow. I called other friends in the area. Nobody got snow, and it melted in, like, 10 or 15 minutes. It was just this, like, weird thing that happened. And so, being an inquisitive person that I am, I started asking my guides that I did know and worked with, "Who is this?" And that was the only question I could come up with. Who?
The
Who,
abominable
who?
snowman
Right. Some kind of, yeah, I don't know, overlord of weather? I don't know
from
what
the
it is.
island of lost toys. This is all stuff from
Maybe
Rudolph.
that's
Yeah,
where, right.
yeah.
So, after asking who in meditation and coming in and out of my dreams and, like, what is going on? Who is it? A few days later, I walked outside, and I have a picture. I'll have to send you the picture. Maybe we can drop it in the edit, but, um, there was the shape of a branch in a question mark, and then the point of the question mark was like an acorn or a rock or something big in my driveway, a question mark with a little point, and when I went inside, I said, "This is too good. I have to go get a camera or my phone," or whatever it was I used at the time. When I came back out and took the picture, there's 4 different orbs in the picture
Around the question mark?
around the question mark.
Wow.
Mhm. So, that was the Galactic team, and I always feel like I need, like, a little drum roll or something after this. So, maybe it takes a lot to get my attention, and that's why things have to do that, but I love synchronicities, and I love things like that, and I love exploring the boundary of reality and how we're all learning to make these different connections across time and space and dimension and all the things, so it gets to be really fun when you chase things down like that, but that's my driveway story.
So, the craft, you said it looked like a blue orb. Do you think that's what it was? It was a spacecraft?
I don't know, I never saw it again,
I heard a yes.
um
I heard a
yeah,
yes,
and
it
just
was.
the fact that it happened, an hour or so before that snow occurred, and then everything else kind of amplified and went forward from there. It was something. I don't know.
Well, it's interesting too when you are describing it as an orb because when you were describing what was happening in your driveway with the snow, I'm thinking it was almost like you were the inside a snow globe. because
Oh,
it didn't
right.
go anywhere
Mhm.
around you. It was only in your enclosed
Yeah.
environment, like a snow
Mhm.
globe.
And I think even just my backyard, which is fenced in, and not even in the front, but I don't remember that part specifically. I just remember and they were giant snowflakes, like, they were so odd and fluffy and very Truman Show, actually.
Wow, interesting. Okay. So, your guides that are galactic, tell us about them. How do you know they're galactic? Does that mean that they live on other planets? They originated from other planets? All of the above? What why galactic guides instead of guides that were human? Maybe these guys were human in different
Mhm.
lifetimes, but why the differentiation?
I think the main reason for the differentiation is the frequency that they can hold, and this I call it the space, pun intended, that they inhabit. So, the main group of guides that I've deemed them galactic because they've explained to me different origin points. Right now in the work that we're doing together, they don't really inhabit any planet. They shift into because they're pure light body, but they shift into a form and a way in which I can perceive them and communicate with them when it's time for us to do what it is that we do, our work together. But I think another reason is some of the art that I do and the sacred geometry connected to that is tied to some of the Arcturian lineage and their specialty is geometry and math and things that are kind of form based and complex structures. So in order for them to transmit some of that to me when I drop into a channeled state to do the art, that's kind of where they come from. It's just like having anybody that you would, I guess, hire for a team. Everybody has their own specialty and their thing that they're strongest in. And so a lot of these galactic beings, and there are many, they won't tell me how many. It's kind of like this never-ending well. If I ask for who needs to step forward with something, it may be somebody different every time, but in my perception of them, they're all kind of in the same general area, like this disc kind of thing that almost floats. It's very Star Trekky and spaceshipy, but, um, there's just this never-ending kind of line or crowd of them there available, and I think also going along with all the consciousness work that we're doing on the planet right now, many more people are accessing these different frequencies. I wanna say higher, but again, as humans, we tend to think higher means better because we like to go up the rung. It's just a different frequency in that kind of space, but I think it was primarily to connect with me for the art, and then it also turned into being, channeled transmissions in that way.
I'm perceiving it as a different frequency similar to you want to listen to country music on 94.7, you want to listen to classic rock on
Yeah.
102.5, you want to
Mhm.
listen to uh, classical music on, 101.3. It's just a different channel that you're
Mhm.
tuning to, and that
Yes.
they all are spirit that can communicate with us, and one is not better than another. To your point,
Okay.
it's just for different things that you're
Yes.
looking for guidance on. When I'm working with people, clients primarily, who want to know who their spirit guides are, spirit guides all look to me like a version of Father Time. They look like
Mm.
old men with white hair, white beards, and white gowns, and they're various sizes, tall and thin, short and chubby, whatever. And then when we hone in on them and we say, "Okay, show us the lifetime in which you live that correlates the most with what Heather wants to explore here right now," then they'll
Mhm.
morph into whatever, and they'll look like humans, or they'll look like I normally see humans, I don't see a lot of aliens. I mean, I've seen past lives in different galaxies far, far away and on different
Mhm.
planets and things. But normally I'll see spirit guides that are human at one point, and they can range from, looking like somebody's grandmother to I've
Mhm.
seen a couple of times. this guy that comes in, Heather, and he looks like the banker in Monopoly, the Monopoly game. I've seen Mary Kay Ash, I've
Yeah.
seen
Mhm.
figures that are historic figures both in business and commerce and in government. Sam Walton, Abraham Lincoln, George
Mhm.
Washington, different
Yeah.
scientists, things like that. And they appear to me in a way that I can recognize who they are as they're telling me,
Mhm.
what their name is and then why they're advising my client. So that makes total sense to me that you're
Yeah.
doing that. What is speaking of your art, and I wanna get into that in depth here in a minute, but what's quantum mapping?
So quantum mapping is a technique that I'm going to say I channeled that as well because I never sought it out. It's something that as I would go to work with clients in an energy healing capacity, for me, their energy would kind of organize itself in this distinct pattern almost where it's a grid around their energy body, and I call them energy ley lines because they would have, like, different lines would have a theme. I think most people by now are aware of the chakras, and they all kind of are a CEO of their own area of the body, and they work with different things. This took that and added to it a little bit where there might be a line that's related to past lives, there might be a line that's related to relationships, and then the intersection point of those might help me identify not just where in the body, because if you also can imagine that being overlaid over the form of a person standing in front of you, so often it points to a certain area of the body, it will, like, light up like a light bright board for me in that way, but then it's also giving a clue of where we can explore a certain theme with them. So, that just kind of came during I was doing kinda traditional Reiki and tea touch and other things, and then just surrendering into working with clients remotely, I would start channeling sound, and I would have an urge to do certain motions. I would bring other sounds in, like I needed to do chimes for this person or a drum for somebody else. I never asked to do any of that. I'm just sitting here on my couch, trying to have a conversation with somebody, and all this other stuff wants to come in. And then that eventually went to let's organize it in this certain way so that number 1, we can be a little efficient with it, but number 2, it can be kind of a pattern that I can go back to time and time again. Doesn't happen every time I work with someone, but it's something that I observed, noticed, went deep into to see what it could teach me and what I could gain from it, and then, have taught a couple of classes on it to help other healers as well.
Wonderful. Alright, so do you come from a spiritual family? Or did you just, like, grow up a regular kid and then all this stuff just started coming in? Have you always been able to see dead people and talk to them, or how'd that
I
come
have
in?
always communicated to things that are not only human. So I was telling the story the other day. I always would walk around and know the consciousness of plants and trees and animals in my yard. And even one time they were paving the street outside my childhood home. And I remember hearing the rocks object and saying, "We didn't ask for this." And there I was living, must have been like 4 or 5, picking rocks out of the tar and trying to save them from whatever that was that they didn't want. So, in that regard, I always was kind of open in that and had that understanding.
Can you give us some more examples other than the rocks? Like, what did the trees tell you? What did the bunnies tell you? Things like that.
Well, I joke that, I probably stopped telling adults what happened because the plants in the yard would just say, "Hey, I'm like, basically, I'm not poisonous. You can, take a little piece of this leaf and taste this and see what that is for you." And they may have said at the time, this would be good for a fever or a rash or whatever it was. But can you imagine as a mom, your child just outside munching on plants, not knowing what they are? Like, I'm sure I got in trouble for that, for doing it. And I remember the horses across the street that our neighbor owned would be boarded at, like, a barn during the week sometimes, and when they would come back to, live on their property, I would sneak over. I wasn't supposed to leave the yard, but I snuck over to see the horses and would feed them grass, and I had this understanding of them saying, "No, that grass over there would be better," and we would like that instead. And then they would tell me, like, the gossip from the barn where they were.
Like what? Like
Like,
what the
"You
people
won't
were doing?
believe what this person did, and this horse has, like, such an attitude," and I listened to them like I was listening to adults having a conversation. Um,
I love that.
yeah, but again, if you hear a small child telling that, it is it imagination? Is it something she's actually witnessing? I think it would be hard to discern as a parent. So, my family was always very supportive of those topics in general. We would watch documentaries on mediumship and spiritual things, and but also we would watch Nova and Nature and all the science-based stuff. And because my sister who had cerebral palsy, we had kind of a unique way of understanding communication because we knew what she wanted and she was nonverbal. So I think we were a little bit more understanding of it's not just language that connects us and there's something that goes deeper in a way that you can understand a soul and understand a person. So we had that as well. But I also went to Catholic school and it wasn't really something I would openly go and chat about because the first couple of times I did, I was the weird girl that nobody wanted to hear from, and don't tell me like, I would go to class and tell somebody, "Hey, John, I had a dream that you were gonna cheat on this math test, and the teacher found out about it, so you probably don't wanna do it." Nobody wanted to hear that from me. So, I would have kids tell me, "Please don't dream about me, Heather." And I wasn't controlling it, it was just what I was observing. So, I kinda shut it down for a long period of time because I wanted to be normal and I wanted to fit in as everybody does. But then, around my 20s, I started getting more and more interested and was always even though I wasn't speaking about it to other people and I didn't have anybody in my direct life who had any similar experiences, so I didn't really have anybody to share it with, but I was always reading stories of, different mediums and energy healing and went through the whole section on religion in the library, like, show me all of it. Give me Buddhism, give me Judaism, like, mysticism, all of it. So I was always kind of intaking it all and fascinated by it, but the expression of it probably came more into development in my 20s.
Did you find commonalities in the religions with the spiritual occurrences that were happening in your life? Did you find others that certainly the mystics and others, did you find some commonalities when in your reading of all of that
Yes.
stuff?
So I loved the commonalities between all of the religious doctrines were essentially we're all reaching for the same thing. It's to me, it always felt very much like how you explained different frequencies. It was like, well, I want to reach God, I want to reach enlightenment, I want to have a good life. If you tune to this dial, you get Buddhism. If you turn to this dial, you get Hinduism. Like it was everybody was saying the same thing in my interpretation as a teenager anyway. And then when I would look at the different ways like mystics or saints in the Catholic tradition, they were all having these very fascinating, interesting experiences, and I remember feeling a little bit like, "Well, what makes that so special? Like, why is that celebrated in this timeline, but kinda not talked about now where I am?" Because in my small town library, all of the books on mediumship and animal communication and ghost hunting, they were right next to the occult and they were right in front of the librarian's desk. So anybody who checked them out was under close observation and watch, and it was just this weird vibe. And more often than not, the books would get checked out and nobody would bring them back because they were just like, I'm not gonna be like known for taking this back or we couldn't get them anywhere else. I don't know what it was, but there was just a small group of them, and it was interesting how those were the ones that were kind of for some reason, oddly kept and supervised in that way.
Mm, interesting. So, do you think we're all born with intuition? And if so, how can we validate it? How can we trust it?
Oh, that's a great question, and that's something that, adults to this day of all ages are frequently trying to say, "How do I know that it's my intuition and I didn't make something up?" I do think we all are born with it to a degree. I think it is a little bit like any skill. So, playing a piano, and anybody can kinda learn chopsticks or you can learn a simple tune. Are you going to go to Carnegie Hall and perform with an orchestra? There's a very select group of people who develop it to that ability. So I think it's a little bit of your aptitude for it and your determination to develop it. But I think inherently as humans, yes, we have intuition. I think often we are persuaded or somehow made to feel that it is unnatural because we should prove things, we should have something in writing. We shouldn't go look for question marks made out of branches in our driveway and get really excited about that. And so little by little that becomes logic becomes the main way in which we are accepted, the main way in which we are approved, the main way in which we communicate, and then our gut instinct, which is the same as intuition, gets deprioritized, which then makes us trust it less and less because it's a muscle we aren't really using. So I think validating it for yourself or kind of learning to trust it again takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of courage and it takes the understanding of how it comes through for you. Everybody that's the other thing. Everybody experiences it a little bit differently. So it's good to explain and expand your awareness into how it could work, but then you really have to dial into your own experience of it and learn to trust yourself in that way.
I agree. It's practice. That's why all my training has live practice groups because the more you do it, the more validation you get, the more validation you get, the more you trust it, and then it's just second
Yes.
nature. Yeah. Do you
Yes.
walk around with your radar on all the time or do you turn it on and off at will?
Oh gosh, no, no. Um, I'll say I have like a radar light, maybe. Um, I'm plugged into the world in what I feel is an expanded way, but am I super open and out about every little thing that's going on? No, for a couple of reasons. Number one, I want to protect my energy, and that would drain me too much. Number two, I'm here to be human too. So I don't always want the answers at the back of the book. And yeah, I also think there's an etiquette to it as well. I don't wanna unless somebody asks for my assistance with something, I don't wanna just like, that's one of the lessons I learned with the kid in school or kids in school when I would say, "Don't cheat on that test," or "Don't ask that girl out," or whatever. It's not appropriate to just blurt that out with somebody unless they are really open to it. So, I had to learn that through rejection a lot, and now it's just, I like to know and have an awareness of more than just my physical senses, so I expand out in that way, but then super open, not unless I'm doing my work and connecting with somebody.
I think there's I believe there are ethics to it as well, especially with the medical
Mhm.
stuff,
Yes.
because I don't ever scan anybody without their permission. I just
Mhm.
think it's a violation of their privacy, and I'm not gonna do it. Can I do it?
Right.
Yeah. Will I do it? No.
What would be like owning, a a mobile X-ray clinic and just walking out onto a sidewalk and, X-raying people without their consent? It's yeah,
It's a
if
privacy
somebody's willing.
violation. Here in America, we would say that's a HIPAA violation.
HIPAA.
Yeah.
Right. It's a spiritual HIPAA violation. Mhm.
Absolutely. Let's change gears now. Tell us about your art. Tell us how it came in. Tell us what you do with it. And then you help my producer, Chris, do my energy signature portrait. And he gave it to me as a Christmas present, which I was so thrilled about. And I'd love to do a deep dive and have you dissect it with all of us and tell us what happened? What do the different shapes and things mean and all of that? But let's set it up first with what's the art? How does it come in? All of that. Just give us a little bit of a setup before we bring up my portrait that you
Yes,
did.
beautiful. Yeah, I was so lucky to get to play Santa's elf, a little bit this year for Chris. So a few years ago, probably it was probably spring of 2020. What else was going on in the world? I don't know. Everything was topsy-turvy. And for me, part of that time was a deepening into some of my abilities and gifts. And I just had this calling to connect in with art again. And I didn't know what that meant. I honestly thought it was going to be like craft based. Like, okay, I'll just, paint for a hobby or
Were you
I'll
a
make
painter
things.
before this and you'd kind of set it to the side?
I drawing was more my thing, and as a kid, was obsessed with calligraphy.
Mm,
Oh, what were those things called? Somebody will know. There were these little not like an Etch-a-Sketch, spirograph. There were
yeah,
these little geometric
yeah.
things that you could draw. I was always drawing those shapes, and I was
With
always
different
coloring in
colored
coloring
pencils.
books. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I had the big crayon box. So I was always doing that, and then as I grew up, I did charcoal sketching and things like that and took a couple art classes in college, but left it there. Never really did anything else with it for a number of years. And I just felt this calling like, "Oh, I miss that. I wanna do that so badly." But I didn't really because I hadn't done it in so long, I didn't really know what to do, and so I was just playing with all these different ideas. And around that same time the transmissions for what became one of my books started coming through in dreams, and the way I would receive, like, the topic in the chapter, it came with a picture that looked like a meme that represented whatever we're talking about, like, one of them is "tune out to tune in," and so I would see, like, this cartoon TV, and I thought, "Well" and the pictures would not go away. And it's almost like I couldn't get to the message until I acknowledged the picture, and I thought, "Am I supposed to draw these? Like, I don't know." So I started playing around with a digital art application for the purpose of illustrating the transmissions that were coming through to go with the stuff in my book. And then I had done that for a number of weeks and just was just doodling, and this other stuff started coming out that looked like geometry and color and shape and form, and I thought, "Hmm." It felt like something. I had no idea what. There's where we get to trusting your intuition. It felt different, and that was the only clue that I had. And I thought, "Okay." I also felt different when I did it. I would feel lighter, my energy felt more vibrant, I felt like I was at a different frequency, and I could sketch like that and realize that I wasn't even present in the sketching. I was kind of channeling what was coming through. So I started playing around with it and somehow came to the awareness that, like, I would, for instance, talk to a friend on the phone, be sketching while I was chatting with her, and then realize I just sketched her energy. And I still didn't know what that meant. That was the feeling I got. And I did enough of them that I got a group of my friends together, showed them all that I had done, had like a little mini art show online, and said, I think these are each of you. Can you pick your own out and can you like pick each other's out? And we were just as everyone will see in a second, it was really just a geometric shape with color. It wasn't like I was drawing somebody's face or their profile, and they were able to determine who was who and whose there were. Was that even the right way to say that? And they also said, "I don't know why, but I hear my name called from, like, a higher being, a higher source, or I feel like I wanna cry. I feel like my heartbeat, I feel a rush." Like, they would have very visceral reactions to these.
Now, were these woo-woo people? Were they
No,
into
no, not
spirituality, or they were, like, just regular?
they're some of my normie friends who tolerate me when I'm like if you're a chef, you probably, like, have the friends that you're like, "I tried a new recipe," "Here it is." That's my friends with some of my stuff. So no, they were open to it, but they were not in the woo-woo camp. So they weren't, like, wired to receive things in that way. And then from there, I thought, "Well, I feel like I've been given this or I've been shown this in a way that needs to serve somebody, needs to be an offering for somebody, because if that can help whatever that was, that experience they were having when they would see their own portrait, it was pretty powerful, and I thought, "I wanna give that to other people," because it seems like I'm supposed to, and again, I was just trusting my intuition, and so I expanded out to other clients I had at the time, "Hey, would you wanna do this thing?" And then it got to be I would do one for somebody, they would show somebody at the chiropractor's office, and then that person would contact me, and it just kinda grew from there until I went a little bit larger with it. But during that time of kind of ramping it out with a smaller base of people, my team kind of finally clued me in because I don't think they were going to until I really went for it, that these are energetic signatures of our soul. And this is coming in now into the world, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who does something like this, because as we are ascending, as our consciousness is expanding, we're getting to understand each other in these subtle energy ways. Just like we would wear a name tag that would say, "Hello, my name's Julie," or "Hi, my name's Heather." this is also a way of identifying us as a more expanded version of ourselves. And so within the art is this composite of who you are, how you are, experiences you've had, where you might have opportunities, where you might have challenges. It's this kind of story of you, but it's also this point in time photo of you right now, because I also track these differently. Like people will come back after a period of months or years and get subsequent portraits, and we see where their energy shifts and change because
Wow.
none of us are static. We're all fluid.
That
We're
makes
always
total
changing.
sense. Yeah, and is it an art form for what our spirits are picking up? Everybody's had the experience where we walk into a room and it feels like,
Mm,
"Ew, this room
right.
doesn't feel good. There's something going on here." Or we walk into a
Hmm.
room, we think, "Oh, this feels like a party. This feels really fun." Even as small children, we pick up on that. Is that what we're picking up on and your art represents that, do you think?
I think that's an element of it. I would say it goes a little beyond that. Well, it depends how amplified somebody's broadcast frequency is. That's what my team is saying right now. Um, so we're picking up on elements of that certainly. And I forgot to mention a fun part of the story was when I was still not sure what these were going to be. I started seeing the shape and the color on people's bodies instead of their heads. And that's when I was like, "Okay, team, we gotta do something with this." Like, I can't, because like, the UPS man would bring me a package, and I'm trying to see where I can even see him to thank him, and all I see is, like, this floating blob of geometry.
Wow,
So,
interesting,
it was a little impractical for a minute
interesting.
until I
Well,
corralled it into something.
the other thing that's interesting too, and this just came into my head, Heather, when I first started learning how to do this stuff, and the thing that attracted me to it was the healing stuff first. And
Mhm.
then what I figured out once you connect with spirit, then you can do it all. But as I
Yeah.
was learning the energy healing stuff, I started to see grids on
Mhm.
people. It was almost like an architectural blueprint drawing.
Yes.
And I
Mhm.
would see these lines and I would see these different geometrical, uh, lines and shapes and things like that, and then eventually it got into I can see body parts now
Yeah.
internally in somebody,
Right.
but I
Mhm.
never thought about it before, but that's how it came into me was in lines that,
Mhm.
again, would mimic a blueprint of a building or a home or something. Alright, well, enough
Yeah.
intro, that was a great intro. Show
Dun, dun,
us
dun.
my what do you call it? Energy signature? What do you
Energetic signature portrait.
energetic
Yes.
signature portrait. It's beautiful.
Mhm.
When Chris gave it to me, I was so touched, and I love that you did it.
I love that he thought of it and reached out.
I
Okay.
know it. Alright, here I
Do you
am.
see it okay? Do I need to make it larger? We'll
No, it's
zoom in
good,
too.
but
Okay.
remember, a lot of our audience is gonna be listening instead of
Right.
seeing the picture, so let's
Yes.
very descriptive as we go through this,
Perfect.
please.
Okay. And I want to say too, if anyone's interested in ordering these, one of the things that I offer with this as an add-on is this kind of drill down or examination in it, which some people choose to have, some don't. Some like to just sit with it themselves. But this is kind of an example of what we would talk about in one of those conversations. So I like to start by zooming all the way in. So if anyone's watching, sorry for being a little bit erratic there with the zooming in. But as it was explained to me by my team, the very center of the portrait, almost like the middle of a pincushion, is the seed of your soul entirely. So
And
I like to think of,
it looks kind of like a cross shape, but a flower cross
yes,
shape.
correct.
Yeah.
I like at the very center. Is that, weren't we just talking about yellow too before
Yes,
we
we
came
were.
on the call?
Yeah.
So, and I'll say too, there are generic explanations or commonalities in some of the colors and shapes, but everything is always unique to the individual. So, for instance, yellow often means a good communicator and a good teacher, which I know that you are. Someone else may have yellow, and it may be that they had a certain experience with yellow, and that's why it's in their field or in their soul because it's part of who they are due to something else. So,
It's
even
my
though there
favorite
are,
color.
Well,
And
there
my
you go. It's
house,
right at the heart of you.
a huge
And it
part of
even
my house is painted yellow inside.
yeah,
Yeah,
I love that. It looks also to me like the little splashes of pink in front of the yellow, those look like little hearts a little bit. So
they do.
everything is I would say everything for you boils down to a heart-centered faith in one form or another. And then out from that, there is a bit of a cobalt blue, a darker blue, which for me is often related to communication and not just being a clear communicator, valuing clear communication, prioritizing clear communication. So I think you are someone who appreciates when someone can be aligned in what they're saying too. Not just say it clearly, but mean what they say what they mean. Maybe even being, I don't think you're afraid of the direct communication, either giving it or receiving it, but it's done again from that space of love. And let me know if anything sounds outlandish or completely off in any of this, or if you have questions as we go through any of it. I
Well,
also
I'm
like
not
this.
shy.
We do exactly the direct communication.
Right. True.
Outside from this, we have this really fun, interesting, it almost looks like a pyramid shape in here. And it's interesting to me because to me, I see that as three. And you just earlier in our conversation, we talked about the number three and the divine meaning of that. So as we're going out from that center of you, this turns into more of your expression and your way of being in the world. So I think you are, of course, and everyone watching already knows this, connected to the divine in a way that because of these are like triangles, which are kind of structure. I think you help people overcome obstacles with their own connection and you fortify and give a foundation to that. I like the part where the little bottom section of the lower triangle is open, that feels to me like you are channeling and bringing things through in a way that is supportive for others.
They look like C's. These pyramids have these, for those of you that are listening, they have these fine lines. So there's one on the top, there's one in the middle, and then the base that Heather is
Mhm.
referring to is very uh boldened, I guess I'll say, and it's open. That's what you're talking about, but they all look like C's in different configurations. Is that because Chris gave it to me? So it's a C for Chris?
I don't think so.
I'm making a joke
That
there.
would be nice though.
But I
Mhm.
got Christ consciousness
Oh, I love
when
that.
I saw the
Yes.
C. And
Mhm.
it's not just from Christ, it's from,
Yes.
spirit, from source.
Mhm.
And some people call it Christ consciousness, but that's what I
Yes.
got for the C. Did you get anything for that, for the C?
Not specifically, no,
Yeah.
and I will point out too that that's what I love about these pieces
Mhm.
is I am just an observer of them. I'm the facility that they come through and I'm the observer and I'm, tuning into what I can, but often the recipient or the subject of the portrait has their own thing with it. Sometimes people will see faces of loved ones in like the colors and the backgrounds, and that's nothing I would see. In fact, I have one particular client almost every time we talk about one of her pieces of art. She's like, I know you see that there's a wolf there. And I'm like, I really don't. If I
Mhm.
tried to draw a wolf, I couldn't do it. So it's interesting. We see what we're supposed to see, which is also tying back to trusting your intuition and trusting your feeling. I've also had many people tell me that their portraits will change over time.
Mhm.
So they will notice something one day and swear it wasn't there the next day or vice versa.
I'm seeing
So
a lot of the triangles, the pyramid thing in
yeah.
a bunch of this. There are triangular shapes all
Hmm.
over it in different configurations. And what's coming to mind to me for that is the pyramids as energy generators.
I love that. Yes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That I
Hmm.
certainly am an energy generator when I'm working with people who call into the show or clients.
Yes.
Interesting.
I would say too, even in your kind of world pre this, you were someone who got things moving and going and an idea generator and a builder, right? So those feel like building blocks to me as well in that. I also want to talk about the splashes of color kind of here that it looks like somebody took paint and just flung it
Mhm.
behind some of these shapes, that is often someone who is coloring outside the lines, we might say, a little bit, doing things that are different. Someone says zig, you may zag. Um, Adding a different bit of flair to things that you do in life. I'm gonna zoom out a little bit.
I'm an
Oh, and I we
entrepreneur, so of course. Yeah.
exactly, yeah, blazing your own trail.
Yeah.
Perfect. Um, I wanted to mention too, as I'm zooming out, in case it happens here, sometimes spirit takes over and moves the portraits independent of me. That's happened on more than one occasion. So just a fair warning for that. They may behave today though. So we'll see. The next thing that I'm called to talk about is this. There's like a pale purple lavender with these little sparks of light in there. And that feels to me, I don't know, and you don't have to reveal for us here, of course, but this feels like a new offering, a new idea, something brewing that hasn't really come to fruition in its full form yet. And if that's not something that's already on deck for you, it may
No,
be coming
you're
soon.
right on target because I'm starting to develop an intro to energy healing course.
Nice.
That's a
Oh, I
beginner
love that.
course that's
Yeah.
gonna be for everybody. Certainly my advanced angelic attendant training is all of it. But yeah, that we're right in the middle of that right now, and it'll be available in a couple of months.
Ah, beautiful.
Yeah.
And I love, like, if I zoom in just on that part, there's that kind of thick line of that almost looks to me like if you said, "Draw me a light line of energy or a line of light energy," I can't even say it, that purple kind of going horizontally across looks like this kind of supercharged ray of energy in that way. So since it's purple, that always also ties in for me for intuition and healing, so I think that's interesting there.
What's the blob in the middle? It almost looks like a figure in the middle.
It kind of does, a little
Yeah.
bit.
Kinda looks like Buddha or or somebody like that, like
Sure, yeah.
one of those,
I
Taoist, uh, gods or
yeah,
icons or something.
sure. I think for me, it's a representation of just guidance in general is what my team is gonna say. Um And the message that I know you would, but the message that they're saying is ask if you need help. Like, that's the feeling they're saying is if you get stuck on something, like a way to phrase something, a way to push something through, maybe there's an obstacle with the technical aspect of something, not to be afraid to surrender and ask and go with the flow.
The curvy line underneath that, Heather, what do you get from that? It's very pronounced.
It is.
Looks like a
The
wave.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I was gonna say. The curves for me are often opportunities or areas where we should surrender and not be so structured about something. So, for somebody that might be, I need to be a little more creative in something, or for somebody else, it might be, oh, I'm in conflict with my spouse right now. I should, back off that a little bit and turn the heat down slightly. Whatever it means for somebody, it may be a little bit different since it's coming in presentation close to where this is with that kind of new offering energy. I think it's
Mhm.
that it's surrender into anything wherever there's an obstacle. They're saying like step away from it, back away instead of plowing through and pushing through, back away instead. And then coming out of there, there's again beautiful gold slash yellow. We're going to wear yellow in all the forms today. This feels like an expression of more mastery. So, someone who is explaining things in a way from a very experiential foundation in a way that allows others to be elevated, and it ties into this particular part here, elevated in a way that connects those other people you are communicating with to love because of this beautiful kind of mauvey pink color in here. Which again, I would say there looks like a figurine in here for me too that looks angelic. I don't know if you kind of
Yeah,
see it or
it looks to me like a, Hawaiian or, like a totem almost.
sure. Yes, I can see that. Mhm.
Yeah, like
And
a
zoom out.
native indigenous
Like a
tribe
tribal,
totem
right, a
tribal
tribal
thing.
figure.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm. Uh, and then we've got actual heart shapes in here, which is not
Mm.
surprising. Again, tuning into everything that you are putting out in the world, broadcasting, sharing. not even from a true definition of broadcasting, but the metaphorical. You're sharing something with the world is through a perspective and a filter of love so profoundly that, we had to stick the hearts in here to make sure you really got it in that interpretation. And then this next kind of section I want to talk about, it looks like hot pink or red with some mottled gold into a gold section that then has some I was gonna say furry. So we'll go with that. Some furry kind of pale white color. There's purple, blue, and green. I sound like I don't know, labeling a crayon box or something, but in general, this particular area is for you, Julie, 2025 coming up. Powerful. A powerful, potent year for turning opportunities into progress, turning any kind of open door into something larger. They show me, like, stepping up on a platform in a different way. So I think it just they're saying it's success, it's fun, it is an up-leveling in that way, but also because of that blue and the way it almost looks like mini waves inside that bright blue color, be sure to cool things down that get too hot. It's about the balance of this, and that is what's gonna help alchemize and transform things for you in this coming year. And then if we go to what I call, because I have no other way after 5 plus years of doing this to describe this other than the bubble layer, 'cause it looks like bubbles to me. That feels like it can mean a couple of things for people. Often it is a presence of your higher self and your guides, and your energy here looks extremely beautiful and coherent and kind of broadcasting yellow again in some of the presentation, the kind of the 4 corners or the top, bottom, and the 2 sides here. Absolutely beautiful support that you have from your team, which again, anyone watching, it's not surprising that that would appear here. And then the background colors are incredibly vibrant, which to me also represents you. You're a very vibrant person. They're very strong. They are um, also kind of thematically connected to teaching and support and broadcasting and healing. This pop of almost like a red down here. Red doesn't show up very often in my portraits. So when I do find it, it always kind of catches my attention, and here it feels like this call to and expression of you being very grounded in all that you do. There is a very practical application to what you're doing, and I think you also have a mind to keep yourself grounded in it, even in the woo. And I think that's a beautiful way that you weave that together in what it is that you do, that anyone can learn it. It's practical, it's a skill you can develop and practice. And there's a very beautiful aspect to pulling that down into someone's awareness because it empowers them, but it also almost not demystifying in a bad way, but it takes the shine off of the, "Oh, I couldn't do that. It's too spiritual," or "I couldn't do that. It's too whatever." You're like, "No, you really could, actually. Let's work on it." So bringing that in for somebody in a very beautiful way. I also see this kinda, bluish purple bright line at the top. Those are often guides as well. I like to think of it as if you were looking at like a Polaroid or an actual picture of somebody going behind like somebody's head and making a little, it's like a hey, what's up? A little sign. So that's kind of a flyby or a stop from one of your guides. And blue for me often ties in with galactic energy. So there you go for that. Look out, watch your driveway, watch for snow, and
The bubble that's around it, when you were talking about that, Heather, what I got out of that is it's the equivalent of the energy field membrane that I
nice. Yes.
teach about.
Mhm.
It's the container that holds the energy that makes up our body and our spirit. And the
Yes.
spirit's the main part of the body. So
Mhm.
I was getting that. Also, there are pyramids in the energy field membrane. A lot of it's kind of
Yeah.
almost looks like petals, like,
Mhm.
um, in a semicircle kind of thing. But then at the top, the bottom, and both sides, there's that pyramid structure again, which
Yes.
we're seeing a lot of. What are the cloud looking segments down at the bottom primarily? on the really pronounced on the left side, some on the right side, and then there's some in the upper right corner.
Just more the way they're gonna say that is this is more the energy that is kind of in your aura around you. So that can be you broadcasting it out, that can be you receiving it. It's often a little bit of both. I like to use the example of walking into a store where they're spraying perfume, you kinda get get some of it on you in that way. So this is kind of just the way you are vibing in the world right now. And the fact that the clouds just take different shape because 'cause they're kind of moving and morphing in. As I look at this, it's always even though it's a stagnant piece of art in its presentation when I observe it, it's always moving and breathing, and so that is your energy field as well, pulsating and moving and vibrating in different ways.
The thing about all those colors that surround the main part of the portrait are interesting because they seem to be more vibrant
Mhm.
and more concentrated than the ones
Yes.
even inside the graphics and the symbols and all of that. What
Yeah.
is that common that you see that that's the case, or is that just me?
It's not uncommon, but it's not every single portrait that happens. What that often represents for me is someone who is in balance
Okay.
with Their the way they present themselves in the world and the way they are internally, or just
Mhm.
imbalance in general.
Mhm. Okay, because the orange in those areas around the, geometrical shapes are
Mhm.
more vivid than they are inside the
Yes.
shapes.
And I'll tell you something too, it doesn't apply every time, and my team never tells me if it really applies for any particular portrait, and you don't have to reveal it if you don't want to, but when I initially started doing these, I asked for some kind of logic, like, "Give me something that makes sense in this weird thing that I'm doing." And initially, they mapped out sections of the portrait to represent different periods of time for someone. So they're always a snapshot of where you are now. But
Mhm.
if you were to look at where you are now as the very center of the portrait,
Uh-huh.
and I'm talking specifically about like the cloud layer in the background, the left, the left-hand side was more things that occurred in your life for the past 2 or 3 months. So as we look at yours, those oranges are really popping on that side. And that to me is birthing something, creativity,
Mhm.
bringing an idea to full generation. And then the middle again would be like the present time. So that might be we were doing this around the holidays, so time with family and really connecting in with some of those pinks of compassion and love and things like that. And then the right-hand side would be what's coming up for you in the next 2 to 3 months. So again, staying really grounded as you're putting something through, having clear communication with it with the blues on the top. There's some purple tying into intuition there as well.
Fascinating. It's beautiful. For those of you that are listening, we'll put a shot of it on my social media. So that'll be easy for you to see it. And then if you have the opportunity to watch this on YouTube on the Ask Julie Ryan channel, then you'll be able to see it as Heather zooming in and out of the portrait. And I just wanted everybody to see this and hear you explain it, Heather, because I think it's fascinating. And from what you sent me about the information that your guides were channeling as you were putting all of that together, it was right on. I mean,
Oh, good.
there wasn't
Yeah.
anything that I thought, that doesn't apply to me." I mean, it
Yeah.
was
Good.
very accurate of
Great.
what you were talking about there. So, how long does
Well,
it
thank
take you to do that, and what's your process when you do that?
So it depends. Some people's energy comes in, and I think that's kind of like, when you meet somebody, it's like, oh, she's all there. Like some people's energy just comes right in like a comet, and it'll take me maybe 45 minutes to an hour. Other people, it can take up to 2 hours to do. Sometimes I will start someone, get about 2 hours in, and then the team says, "Come back to it another time." So I'll kind of revisit their portrait, but typically I'm doing it in one session for somebody. So anywhere from 1 to 2 hours for that, and my process is I don't meet with anybody first. I like to have as few details as possible, and I just have their name and their geographic location. And that, for some reason, is the key that unlocks whatever this is for me. And in a digital art application, it's all hand drawn. None of it is computer generated. But I will go in and just kind of go into a channeled state and be kind of a light. I like to think of it like a light conscious sedation at the dentist, when you're getting work done. I'm still there, but if I am purposefully saying, "Oh, I know Julie, I bet she'll have a lot of purple because she works with intuition." Inevitably, something happens with the app where I, as Heather, cannot control something. They will erase brush strokes, they will turn my iPad off, something happens, so I have to get out of there and just let whatever comes through come through, and then I do the interpretation or the reading of it and the channeled messages after when I go back as a viewer, so I kind of am wearing 2 different hats with it during the process.
So all of those geographic designs that are in there, you're doing all that freehand?
Mhm.
Good.
Yes.
How? You're reminding me of those little, clear plastic things that were tongue and groove that
Yeah,
you
the
put a
spirograph.
pencil the
Yeah.
pirate spirograph, yeah.
Maybe I practiced enough as a kid, but it's just in there as, like, muscle
Because it's so
memory.
precise. Do you put it
Yeah.
through some kind of a program to tighten it up once you've drawn it?
Mm-mm, mm-mm, mm-mm.
Wow. Because I
Yeah.
thought it was computer generated. I thought you were
I
doing
know, that's why I always have to give that disclaimer
yeah.
that no, it isn't. Yeah. So, I mean, it's not just me. My team is completely we can
So do you
we can
start in
thank
the
the
middle and then
Arcturians.
you work out? Do you start out and work in?
I start in the middle and work out.
Okay. And
Mhm.
then the colors are filled in. So do you
Yes.
draw the
Cloud layer happens first. And I say that it happens in its first iteration. Sometimes I'll come back to it after the geometry, but the cloud layer happens first. I do the outline of the geometry next. Then I will do primary, I don't mean primary like red, green, blue, but the first layer of colors in just a normal kind of wash of paint. And then there's a texture layer where you saw some of those things where there were like, it looked like waves or it's modeled or there's glitter. That is its own kind of application that comes after. And if I come out of channeling and look at that, it's not kind of in the middle, I'm like, "Ah, this one's not gonna be really pretty," 'cause they don't look great until they're done, and I always get worried halfway through, I'm like, "Oh, man, this one's no good." But then, beyond me, everything comes together and coalesces, and then, the bubble layer, different people have different things behind their main geometry, sometimes it's a grid, sometimes it's lines, sometimes it's light shooting out, it just depends. And then some final touches of maybe there's, some extra light that wants to come in the cloud layer, maybe another texture wants to come in, maybe I need a different shadow somewhere. Gets a little finicky at the end, and then I just get this sense of you're done, and then that's it. That's
so
a wrap.
are you cognizant of what's going on the whole time you're doing it, or is it spirit just moving your hand?
I'm cognizant, so, I'm in there. I'm in here. I'm just not the driver or the doer of it. I'm just kinda almost like automatic writing, but it's
Mhm.
automatic
Mhm.
whatever, automatic arting, automatic drawing.
Right. So
Mhm,
when you do this for people, how do they use it to enhance
mhm.
their lives? I mean, the stuff that you told me is all stuff that I basically know. So how do
Sure.
I take that and integrate it into a way that it's gonna enhance my life?
Well, for a lot of people, and I just heard this the other day, and I think it's one of the best testimonials I can give to answer that question. I spoke with a client all the way around the world in Israel. And she said, "It's such a comfort for me to know that you, all the way on the other side of the world, who has never met me, doesn't know me, but got these messages about me and understands that this is who I am as a soul." So for a lot of people, it's a confirmation of what they already know, but maybe aren't hearing back from loved ones or are afraid to share with others, or maybe won't even admit for themselves in that way. And I'll go back to when I was initially practicing with my group of friends. It's the visceral reaction that I think you, because of the work that you do and the beautiful soul that you are, you're used to that ooey gooey feeling kind of thing. A lot of people will witness their portrait and feel something that they haven't felt before. I often hear people say, like, "That's the first time I've seen myself. I look in the mirror and that's not me, but I look at this portrait and that's who I am." They'll put them on their lock screens on their phones or their devices to remind themselves of who they are in this world that sometimes tries to make us be something we're not. And then I think the more that somebody gets attuned to working with the observation of the portrait and working with energy in general, they're able to then say, "Oh," especially clients who will have I do these as a package where you get 4 in a year as well if somebody wants something, not just a single one, and when we do 4 in a year, they'll look back and say, "Oh, there's my divorce. I see where that was in my energy," or, "There's the job opportunity I turned down." They're able to kind of fine tune and reaffirm for themselves or see in advance, like, "Oh, this one, it looks like my energy's a little more open. What have I been doing lately? Well, I've been sleeping better. I've been working out. I've been eating healthy. I got rid of the friends that were pulling me down," or whatever it is, and they can kinda calibrate how they move through life based on what they're seeing reflected back in the art. It's really very cool, and there's no right way to work with it, but so it varies from person to person.
Mhm. Well, a couple of observations too as I've been listening to you here for the last couple of minutes. One is I believe that it can reinforce to people who don't really buy that there's more to life than what our five senses pick up, number
Sure.
one. And number
Mhm.
two, that it perhaps is another form of astrology or other
Oh.
things like that to help
Mhm.
people know what's coming or help people anticipate. Okay, this opportunity is coming up. These colors,
Mhm.
these patterns, these shapes show you that, yeah, you need to take advantage of it when it's
Yes.
coming. And
Yes.
that perhaps it's another form of not fortune telling, but in that same genre of
Mhm.
helping somebody plan for what's going to be unfolding in their life in the near future. Does that resonate with
Yes.
you?
It absolutely resonates, and I have had conversations like that where, I'll do kind of a blind read, like what we just did with someone, and I won't hear any of their story beforehand, but I'll do the little spiel about their art, and there might be something in there where I'll say like, "Girl, you gotta go f like, I don't know what's coming up for you, but there's something big, and, everything looks like it's positive and for the best," and then they'll kind of be like, "Well, I didn't wanna say anything, but" it'll be like, "I'm publishing a book," or "I'm going on Broadway," or it'll be some big thing. So, yeah, you're absolutely spot on with that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
interesting. Well, thank you again for not only doing that beautiful piece of art, I'm going to have it framed and put it in my home,
Oh
but also for explaining it so beautifully and in such a concise way where it's easily understandable for
oh, thank
me
you for
and hopefully for
yeah.
everybody that's listening and watching the show. I have one last question for you. And before we get there, I would love if you would check in with your peeps, your guides, and see if they have a message for us today here as there's so much going on. Certainly, you're in North Carolina and the hurricane has affected people in your area, and they are still recovering from so many people lost their homes and all of that. And then we magnify it to right now, these horrific fires are happening in Los Angeles. And last count I heard was over 12,000 homes have been lost. And the
Wow.
fires are only they're burning in about 4 or 5 different areas, and I lived in LA for a long time, and I called on all the hospitals out there, so I know LA County probably better than most people that have lived there all their lives. Because you tell me a city, and I
Mhm.
can tell you what hospitals are there, even from 40 years ago when I was a sales rep. But they're in all these different areas, and everything's so taxed, and it's just so many of these people don't have insurance, and it's such a tough time on these people, not only where you are in North Carolina and elsewhere where there's strife and conflict in the world, but especially in our zeitgeist right now with what's going on in Los Angeles. Do your guys have anything that they want to tell us about that or any encouragement or suggestions that they want to volunteer?
Yes. Yeah, so I can kinda I won't trance channel them, but there's some messages that they were, um, pushing through when you were saying that specifically, and it is there's a couple of ways to not interpret, but to witness or perceive what's going on, and one is and this will come as no surprise to anyone listening, but look at the world from the room of your heart, and when they say that, they my team means it very specifically. They often guide me and others I'm speaking with through a meditation of really imagining if the space of your heart was a room. Maybe it looks like a library for you, maybe it looks like grandma's kitchen, maybe it looks like a beach house, but anything that you're witnessing in the world that is sharp, that triggers you, that is less than. Don't watch it from here. Don't watch it from your brain. Imagine you're taking all of your energy, pushing it down to that room in your heart. And if you were watching it through those windows from that space, how would it feel? Because it's going to regulate your nervous system a little bit better and it's going to help you broadcast out your beautiful signature of love. And more than any water putting out fire, more than any fire heating the people who lost homes from the hurricane, forgot which coast I was on for a minute. What is helpful in any sense is our patience, our compassion, and our connection. And they were talking me through earlier today about looking at it from a couple of different perspectives. And the way we think about fire is it's the great transformer. It is action, it is alchemy, it is energy in motion. So help and support and love those who are going through that, but also take a moment to look into your own internal landscape. What do I need to burn down for myself? What isn't serving me anymore? Or what has been running too hot within me that I may need to quell a little bit? And just taking that beat to reflect that back, because if we look at the principle of correspondence, as above, so below, as within, so without, what elements of fire or even water, where are your emotions overwhelming you? If we go back to the period of the hurricanes and water damage. So just doing that internal calibration for yourself a little bit so that we are all rising up. And the team is saying, also picturing the phoenix rising out of the ashes of adversity, so that we're all rising up out of these tragedies into a new level of being, into connection. Because they're also saying, not that it caused anything, but it's a like a coexistent factor. Our world was running really hot coming out of 2024. Just things were spiking and tempers were flaring and there were a lot of hurt feelings, a lot of conflict. And so allowing that pause for reflection for yourself. And then the other message they had coming through was to consider the words influence and confluence and where you sit in that in the spectrum. Are you being influenced by things or are you going with the flow in a confluence of things? And you may have bits and elements of that in your life on either side, but how is it serving you? Are you being swept away by something that you don't intend to be part of? Or are you being overly influenced by something that is altering and skewing your perspective of the world? This is a time to divest yourself of either of those and stand in the center of your sovereignty is the way they would explain it.
So, are there any words of wisdom for especially the people who've been so
Hmm.
tragically affected in the loss of life and or everything that they've owned or that they do own? I heard Melissa Rivers, Joan Rivers' daughter, who lost her home in Malibu, say she took her mom's Emmy and she took a sketch that her mom had done of her and her son, and she took a picture
Hmm.
of her father, and she said that was it. She said, "My whole family history has been erased in this fire." And
Hmm.
certainly she has the financial wherewithal to rebuild, but just the trauma of all of
Yes.
that, and I think of everything that she's been through, my goodness. Her father died by suicide, her mother died very suddenly and unexpectedly, and now she's going through all of this. I'm thinking, "All right, enough already for this gal."
Yeah. A couple of things are coming up for that. So to tie back to what we talked about at the very beginning, your very first question, love never dies. That is some of what we will be walking through, witnessing, and seeing in the world is, yes, someone's possessions, it's absolutely devastating to lose everything. A lot of the people will be seeing there are many more affected, but when we think about Los Angeles and Hollywood, a lot of those individuals are leaders in a public forum of some way. This is an opportunity for all of us to model love, to model connection and to allow ourselves to sit in increasing our capacity of receiving. Because if you think of giving and receiving being the same, two ends of the same energy, a lot of people who have amassed great success, great fortunes, beautiful homes that they've worked for years are now in a position where they may need to receive from others, which also allows others to step up in an ability to give and be generous. And there's a blessing that my team channeled years ago for me that they're prodding me to bring in. So I'll see if I can remember. I remember the one piece they're mentioning, but it's bless my mouth so that I may speak words of kindness to myself and others. Bless my eyes so that I may see the beauty in the world. Bless my ears so that I may hear and recognize the truth. And here's the part they were really bringing up. Bless my hands so that I may feel generous to give and worthy to receive. And bless my feet so that they fall on the path of my highest and good, guided by my angels and ancestors. And we're in that space of surrender and flow and softening for one another, but allowing that human connection. And I think as we see more of these individuals in the public forum, it also gives us this feeling of connection because I think in some ways, individuals often feel unattainable or like, "Oh, that's somebody that has that success, or they have that, or they live in that area." But we're seeing they're affected by things. They have the same tenderness, they have the same needs, the same compassion. We are all love. That's it. So we're rewiring in some ways, I think, the way in which we will show up and serve one another, the way we will connect with one another, and the way we overcome tragedies and transcend traumas.
Yeah, beautiful. Anything else that they want to tell us going forward in the
Mm.
2025 year that
Yeah, breathe is one thing that comes through often, and, another kinda tagline that came through the art for a lot of people that was part of the channeled messages they received, but my teams asked me to kinda pop it out and make it its own thing, and it is, "Be loved, be love," like, be the existence of love, but then be, comma, love. So, like, don't forget to just be. We run around and we do and we solve and we accomplish and we achieve. Don't forget to come to the center of just being instead of human doing, human being. And that softens and mitigates a lot of the spikiness that we're going to feel coming up because it is a year of great change and great um, impact. And people will hear that and receive that in different ways for where they are in their lives. But we are all also, they're going to go back to, we are all love. We are all moving forward on this beautiful, they're saying conveyor belt of consciousness in that way. And so just coming back to that breathe and be gets us through
beautiful. Thanks so much for that. All right, last question. Why do we incarnate?
because we love it here. Um
Even in the midst of fires and floods.
yes, absolutely. We incarnate to a couple 2 reasons. Improve our soul, improve our lessons, our resilience to just like going to the library. When I talked about going to the library as a kid and checking all those books, I was learning, I was building my knowledge. We build our soul level knowledge through experience, through physicality, through challenges and opportunities. And it's like the sweat equity of the soul is coming into this existence. And then we are also data collectors for overall consciousness, for God, for source, for the universe. Looking through our eyes, we all see something like when we were talking about the art, you would see the C's in the art. I didn't necessarily see them that way. We all perceive things a little bit differently and how beautiful and enriching an experience that is. Almost like this beautiful stained glass window. We all have these different parts of ourselves that we're looking out through. And because we're all also one, we share that beautiful perspective. I like to see it too as like disco ball or a chandelier, depends on the day, whichever metaphor I want to use. But we're all these different facets of existence and creation, gathering and sharing all this beautiful information for the betterment of all of our souls, for all of existence. But it takes a little, you got to roll up your sleeves, you got to get in the game, you got to come into this human form to learn the human lessons, the things that we learn here.
Mhm. Beautifully said. Well, everybody, we covered a lot of territory here. The most exciting thing for me was dissecting that beautiful energy signature portrait that you did. Thank you again for helping Chris, and thanks to Chris for getting that done for me. What a wonderful surprise and just a delightful gift, and I'm so grateful to both of you. In the meantime, everybody, how can they get in touch with you, Heather? How can they find out your about more about you and more about your work?
Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to walk through the art. That was such a delight. Best place to find me is my website, heathermays.com. I also have two YouTube channels. One is under Heather Mays, the other is under Hey Radiant Souls, which is daily affirmations. Every day at 7 a.m., you get a short little punchy affirmation from me for anybody who just wants, to dial into a different kind of frequency for their day, a little bit of positivity out there. So look forward to connecting with anybody and supporting them on their journey in any way that I can.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for joining us. Sending you lots of love from Sweet Home, Alabama. Mwah! And from North Carolina, too, where Heather is. We'll see you next time. To enhance your spiritual journey, click on one of the videos below and remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share with your family and friends.